But we'll start with our call to worship, giving honor to God, our creator, our provider, and our redeemer. We love the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our soul, and all our strength. And we love our neighbors as ourselves as we give honor to our spiritual guides, our founder, Mildred Miller, His Holiness and Blessed Memory, Master Malvin Davis. We give honor to the officials that are in charge of governing us, to the problems that they're going in, the problems with the COVID-19, and the problems that they're having with the unrest, the civil unrest that is being caused by our interaction with the police. We give honor to the nurses and doctors and medical profession that are working to help us deal with some of the problems we have today. We have many things that are going against us today. And we give honor to those who gathered with us today. Thank you for being here. Peace abide, Hotep, Shalom. So we're going to now have our reading of the 70th Psalm. And here beginneth. Hasten, O God, to save me. Come quickly, Lord, to help me. May those who want to take my life be put to shame and confusion. May all who desire my ruin be turned back in disgrace. May those who say to me, aha, aha, turn back because of their shame. But may all who seek you rejoice and be glad in you. May those who long for your saving help always say, the Lord is great. But as for me, I am poor and needy. Come quickly to me, O God. You are my helper and my deliverer. Lord, do not delay. So I've read the 70th Psalm in the name of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Blessed Mother. Amen, amen, amen. The next part of our program, we're going to do the Lord's Prayer in unison. I'm going to mute everyone else, but that doesn't mean that I don't want you to repeat. I'm muting you so that we don't conflict with each other as we're going over the prayer. So please repeat with me as we do our Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen, amen, amen. And from here, we'll go to our meditation. I can bring it up. We'll do our meditation. We still have everyone muted. I'll make sure so we can do our meditation. Yes, everyone is muted. And our meditation, I'll ask you to repeat after me, please. My God is excellent. My God is wonderful. We magnify the goodness of God's will, all our hearts, minds, and soul. The Lord Almighty is my protector. Save me now. Save us now. Save us all. Amen, amen, amen. Now, as I've mentioned earlier, but I will repeat, in addition to our message, we're going to be looking at the 6th chapter of Ephesians from the 13th to 17th verse. And this verse, which is still talking about standing your ground, when they're talking about the whole armor of God. And that those verses in that chapter say, therefore put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything to stand, stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith with, with, with which you can extinguish the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. So in Ephesians, it is telling us to stand, but make sure in your stance, or when you're standing, that you put on that full armor of God as part of your protection. And that's what we want to make sure that we're doing now, that we're standing and using that full armor of God. But when you're standing for the truth, there's no shame in taking a stance because God wants you to stand, and God has given you these items to help you stand. And to me, it's always good because it said you stand you first part of that armor. And when we think about armor, we think about what are the weapons, what are the tools in a way that God gives us to be able to deal with the things in life. And so it's telling us that we have these tools, we have these things to help us stand. But the first thing you need to stand with is the truth. That's the first part of being able to stand, is to make sure you're standing with the truth. And when I like to define the word truth, I like to use the ancient Egyptian definition of the truth, because in that definition of truth, truth also means balance. It means harmony. It means reciprocity. It means reconciliation. It means all these things. And one of the reasons I think that it's so important for us right now is that it talks about truth and as a factor of reconciliation. And so often when we face problems in life, we forget to use that truth that reconciles things as part of it. And keep mentioning reconciliation is because I believe that reconciliation or the truth is better than retaliation. And right now, what we see is a lot of people want retaliation, but they don't want they don't want to reconcile things. And it's when you start going out with that spirit of reconciliation that we will actually get the full answers to the things that we are facing in life. So we need that truth. We need to gird ourselves with truth. But a part of that definition of truth is reconcile. How do you reconcile? How do you cause balance? How do you get harmony in the things that you're doing? Not just saying you're going to get retaliation. Retaliation, I think, is not as good because when you retaliate, you just continue the problem. You give me a problem, I give you back a problem. That means now you have two problems, and you keep just piling it up, so the problems just keep stacking up on top of each other. But with reconciliation, when you're standing for truth, with your belt or your loins girded with truth, you're saying, I want to find out, how do we reconcile this? How do we actually get to the problem? Though earlier, before we started recording, we were talking about some of the problems that we were having now and some of the protests that we're having now. With these protests, I still say, it may not be a proper thing to say, but I'm still going to say it, that we need to see, how do we work more for reconciliation than retaliation. In South Africa, one of the beautiful things that they did after they went through their turmoil with a racial divide, and not saying that all their problems are over, but one of the beautiful things they did is they had those reconciliation councils. And with those reconciliations councils, they had the people who had been there before, who had done terrible things. Many of them had murdered people. They had soldiers who were bullies, and I think that's one of the problems we have now, that a lot of them are being trained to be bullies, not to be the guardians of the community that the police should be. But with South Africa, what they did when their reconciliation councils is they allowed everyone to come up and tell the things that had happened to them, and as far as the bad things that happened to them, and even had some of the police and the other people to come. And the only thing they said is, tell us the truth. But we don't want you to tell us the truth and thinking that we're going to try to retaliate against you. We want the truth because we want to know exactly what the problem is. Because when we find out exactly what the problem is, then we'll be able to help to solve that problem. So hopefully, as we're talking here, we'll be start talking more about how do we use the truth, how do we use reconciliation as a tool to help us to overcome our problems, and not always think about retaliation. Retaliation does not solve a problem, and not saying that nothing should be done to the person for the things they've done, but how is retaliation going to make the situation better? And for those who can see the screen, with our message, we're talking about all. We just want to make sure that a definition of all we're using is it from the, and this is from the dictionary, says an overwhelming feeling of reverence, admirations, fear, etc., produced by that which is grand, supreme, extremely powerful, like the awe of God. So it's saying that through that, all that we're talking about in the message, that we're saying it's both admiration and fear and reverence are denoted by the word all. So we'll go to our, well, maybe I should pause and see if there's anyone who like things to say. I see that we had Linda Garvin joins us, and so I'll open up and see because some of the things I've already talked about reconciliation. I'm going to unmute everyone and see if anyone would like to have anything to say about reconciliation, or in other words, using the truth as your measure of solving problems. Okay, I just unmute all. Okay. Did anyone have anything to say? Any comments?
I just wanted to say good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Teresa.
Good morning.
So no
Good
one
morning,
believes that.
everyone. Yeah, Deacon Jackson. Just wanted to say I'm with you, Father. But I do believe our courage, as I was speaking to you earlier, saying when we protest, our courage cannot turn into where our faith starts deteriorating. If we're gonna have courage, we have to have the courage to know that we have to know how to do things in our discomfort and our dismays and without life, because even though we saying we protesting and we standing for what we believe in, but our actions with a lot of other people, not everyone, but some of them is a lot different than what they're saying, and we just have to know it's not good merit when you start burning and tearing down where you live at and you destroying things that because we already like of. It's a lot of stuff we don't have, and I just think it's too many chiefs and not enough Indians in that scenario when it comes to things like this, and I've been I got a brother in Atlanta, I got sons in Dallas, I got a daughter in Houston, I got daughters in Oklahoma, and they ask me, and I'm just telling them, listen, the best thing to do is stay home, don't go out, and just pray. That's all we can do. But don't go out and make a bad decision, because your decisions gonna follow with the consequences, and that consequence is gonna be based upon your action. So we just have to be smart and see the things that's going on, because a lot of these things that's going on is really not going on to help. It's to hinder you. It's to put you in a worse place than you is. So that's just a comment that I want to have.
Yeah. And when I say stand, I don't necessarily mean stand out, because I believe that many of the protests, even the good protests, that they are seeking retaliation. And I'm saying that I want reconciliation, not retaliation. And the reason I said they're standing for retaliation is that most of even the good protests, or the protests that are really looking for it, that the thing that they see is going to be the best help for it is that it's somehow that we retaliate against the officers who did these terrible things. And again, I'm not saying that we should not have some type of real process. But I think they think if they retaliate against these officers, if these officers are charged and punished and put in jail, that somehow the problem is going to be fixed. And I don't believe that. I don't believe that these officers are and the only way I can say it is, I don't think that they're the major center of the problem. And the reason I said I don't think they're the major center of the problem, because I think it's much deeper. I think that you could take those officers, you can arrest them, you can put them in jail, and we would still have this problem. And if that, they're, to me, they're like pawns in the problems. They're not the king. Like I said, if you're playing chess, you're playing a game of chess, the pawns are there. The pawns can be a very powerful and a very problem piece. But when you take a pawn, the game is not over. To get the game over, you've got to go after the king. And all of your strategy should be is how do I get to the king? How do I get to that thing that is actually going to help to end this problem? The pawns are not the way. And many of these officers, all four of them, are to me pawns of the problem. They're not kings of the problem. They are pawns. And if we don't start looking at how we can get at how do you get at that king, that's why I brought in Ephesians, where it says that this is not against flesh and blood. This is against spiritual wickedness in high places. How do you get to that spirit of wickedness that make us believe that we should be against each other? That myth of race, because remember, race is something that is a myth. It's a fable. God did not create different races. God created human beings, and so we're all part of one child, one breath of God. We're all a part of that same breath. We're not part of some different breaths where I'm one species and they are another species. That is something that man has made up, this idea of race. It's just cultural differences that we try to separate ourselves on. So we need to find out how we can actually dig deeper into this and start thinking of some ways of how we get at the king of this problem. And the king of this problem, to me, is this myth of race. And once we can get rid of that myth of race, we can start marching to say, what kind of some ways can we really can find out what is going wrong? I know I'm probably talking long, but before this meeting, I was talking to a friend of mine that we used to have some discussions about African philosophy. And one of the things he asked me is, when some of the things that we studied about African philosophy, I still can't see how we can apply them to the problems we have now. And when I was talking to him, I had not thought of the African philosophy that actually that could help us to work with those problems. But then as I was sleeping last night, and it came to me about reconciliation and how in an African village, if someone had did something wrong, they would bring that person before the whole council of that village. And when that person was for the whole council of the village, before they would tell that person about what he had done wrong, everyone in the village would tell them why you are important to me, why you are important to this village, what role you play in this village. And after it's gone through that, everyone has told that person what they have done that is helpful to the village. Then they would begin to talk about, okay, but something went wrong and we want to know about what went wrong. Now, when you look at that process, we need to do some of that same type of process. And when we're looking at the police, are we looking at the police as something that is totally corrupt, that is totally unnecessary? I believe that we need guardians, even in our community, and that the police, who we are paying for with our taxes, should be the guardians of our community as well as every other community. But even though they say they're here to protect and serve, are they really fulfilling that purpose? And so we have to say how we can get them to be the true guardians that we want them to be. How can we, through our process, where you call it to me, it doesn't have to be a protest, but how do you get to that place where you can, and I don't want a study commission because they've studied this several times and they can go back into other studies and keep saying that the police are a part of the problem. But to me, we need something like a task force, a task force that's going to say, look, we're going to look deeply into this. We're going to look deeply into what the police are doing. We're going to look deeply into what the prosecutor's office is doing. We're going to look deeply into what the judicial system is doing. And we're going to look deeply into what our commissioners and our city folks are doing that are contributing to this problem so that we can get a reconciliation. But as I said, I don't want to be the only one that talks. Anyone else have any comments?
This is Gwen.
Oh, go on.
Somebody else want to talk?
No, go on.
Teresa's saying, going on, Gwen.
Go ahead. Okay. Hi. First, I want to just say good morning.
Good morning.
And I want to just thank God for just having all of us to be able to come together another Sunday. I miss you guys. Thank God for this.
Most people celebrate the holidays at home.
I'm not sure where that came from. Go ahead, Gwen. I'm not sure where that came from.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that God always just works at the right time, and always use you to pick the right messages to teach about. Because me and Troy definitely connect to the messages in a lot of ways, and it always comes. God always shows up with you right on time. So we are just very thankful for the temple and for you guys. God always use you in every way. And it's like I kind of want to speak on what's happening out there in the world, and and that, but I needed to say that first. Definitely, truth.
Yeah, stand for truth.
Very powerful.
Yeah, and that word truth, and remember, truth means, and I mean, even in your homes, when you have problems, start thinking on reconciliation first. How do we reconcile? How do we solve the problem? Not how you retaliate against the other person. And it can be used in your home, it can be used in society, but we need to start looking at reconciliation. Even when we're saying reconciliation, often in the Black community, we talk about reparations, but reparations means to repair. So even that is talking about how do we find ways to repair the system? And that's what reconciliation is doing. This system needs repair. And I don't know if just going out in front of the police are just, like I said, to police, most of them are still pawns in the problem. It's a bigger problem. I think the police should be involved in it because a lot of people saying, oh, we need an outside force to evaluate the police. But I think that's just a retaliation. We want someone outside to look to make, because they think that you will be able to retaliate at them more. For us to do a real conciliation, if we use the South Africa as a pattern for it, you need the police and you need the community to come together. Because I still believe that there's some good police out there that know what the problem is inside the police department better than people outside of the police do. So we actually need some police to come up and actually tell the truth about what is going on, what is happening, that these things are getting out of hand, so that these 4 officers, because there was 4 officers that were participating in the death of this man. Somebody needs to actually start to ask them, what is going wrong with you guys? It's something that's bad, because we're sending you out there to be the guardians of the community, and you're ending up being the bullies in the community. There's another African symbol that I like to look at. The library uses it. It's called Dwinaman, the ram's horn. I think we talked about it when we were in Aries. And one of the things that Dwinaman says, because the ram is a symbol of wisdom, strength, and humility in Africa. And the proverb that goes with Dwinaman, says, it is the heart and not the horn that causes a ram to bully. So while the horn represents the bull, wisdom, and strength, it says that what causes that bull to be a bully is something is wrong with your heart. So it's something wrong with the heart of our police force with their feelings and with their mission that is making these things go wrong. And to get at that heart, the police need to be a part of that conversation of finding out what's wrong with you guys. But I think, Teresa,
But
you want to have something to say?
Oh, I almost forgot what I was fixing to say. I was looking at Al Sharpton, his program from yesterday, and he had Valerie Jarrett on. And we kind of went through this when Obama was in office, and they were talking about how they put together this commission, and they had all these people that came in, and they came up with some things. They saw some problems that was going on with a whole bunch of these police, police, policing all over the United States, and they saw different patterns that was going on with the way the police were treating people,
Mhm.
and they put in a commission that they put in some, I guess you would call it rules and regulations, or something they put in. But they said that when Trump came in, they defunded it. They were doing it because they did it when they had Ferguson. That's what it was, Ferguson. And they did whatever they got. They came to the conclusions. They put it in, implemented with Ferguson, and they had something that was they put into place. But when Trump came in, they defunded it, and they gutted the civil rights department
mm,
of the United States government.
Yes.
are you
And
It's,
serious?
it's got to be real. I guess hopefully it'll be rebuilt back with the new president. Hopefully it ain't Trump.
yeah, because
Okay.
yeah, because some of those things that we need people like Obama who did that commission, and that's why I was saying a task force because I think it
Mhm.
is going to have to be. It can the
Some of
important.
everybody she named off a whole bunch of people, and I know Al Sharpton say he was a part of it, and they got, I mean, people from everywhere and they came together and they formulated based on some sound like to me they had done some research, and they saw the pattern that was happening in the
Mhm.
police forces, and they came in, they put in a something that would rectify that, which they did use on the group in Ferguson, but that was it
and and
after.
more police forces, more cities, because I think it's going to federal guidelines are great, and I said that even though Trump has stopped them, if some of these cities would start saying, "Oh no, well, we want to look at them anyway, and we want to set up a task force in our area that looks at the same things. We want to make our police officers guardians of the community like they should be." Because that's what they are supposed to. They say protect and serve, but who are they protecting and serving? That's not. I don't see that happening in our community. This protection and this service. So we're saying, how can we get them in our community to do that? And that's going to take, I think, task force in the community. If there was a rapist or some other crime happening, there's no problem with them setting up a task force. But why, when we have these type of things, can't we set up? That's why I say studying. A lot of studies have been done. A lot of answers are already out there. But to implement them, I think you need to start getting down to the grassroots level, down to because even you mentioned this thing about the things, and I'm saying that we need to look at them. We need to find out what were these things they put in there, and start talking about them in our churches. So what were some of these things that they mentioned? And we should be just saying, oh, I heard it was they said something about police. Why are we not looking into that? Why are we not looking at what they say were some of the problems? Why are we not looking at what they say were some of the solutions? Why are we just going to go out there and
Hey,
saying,
Tyrone.
yes, ma'am?
Okay, I wanted to say something
Mhm.
because I wanted to say it before I forget. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Um, but one of the things that I used to that I realized a long time ago was that
a lot of children that was bullied while they were in school ended up becoming police officers. A lot of them, they wanted to go into the armed forces when they were bullied and beat up and everything in school, when they were in elementary school, high school, and everything. Then they would grow up and want to be a part of the police force. Wow. Because at some point in time, they were not protected as children. So they grow up with the mindset that they don't want this to happen to anyone else again, as far as that non-protection. But then somewhere down the line, they become the bullies. Yes. Because when they feel like something is wrong or a certain person, and then it's also mental issues too, because they're still mentally carrying everything that happened to them when they were in their youth. So these people that are becoming police officers, before we just allow them to become police officers, they need to get all type of psych evaluations that goes into their past of what happened to them growing up and what type of mindset they have. They need to have some type of questionnaire paperwork that doesn't exactly ask certain questions, and psychologists are able to analyze the mindset of each person by the way they answer those questions, because that's what's happened. A lot of I know it. I've seen it so much in New Jersey. A lot of people that have been bullied, they grow up and they become police officers, correction officers, because now they want to be in a more, they want to have control and power. They more thoroughly that they didn't have when they were younger. They didn't feel protected by the school system. They didn't feel protected by their parents. They didn't feel that sometimes they didn't have friends that could help protect them from getting jumped or beat up or bullied. Okay, they're making they're making bullying a much bigger thing now, but back then bullying was happening all the time, and the schools did not enforce repercussions like they do now.
So that's so true.
So
that's true.
So that,
I'm glad to find that out. Yeah, thank you. That's very insightful. But go ahead.
Right. So now, because of those mindsets and it not being anything being done back then, anything being done before they became a police officer, to see what kind of mindset. Okay, anybody can go and pass a test for the police force. Anybody can do the due diligence as far as doing the running and the exercise and this, but are they really looking into the mindset of these people that they're making police officers? Okay, finding out whether some of these police officers are racist ahead of time. Finding out whether some of them have been abused ahead of time and beat down and, just bullied. Just finding out what is their history before they become a police officer, because somebody could have the mindset of a serial killer and then still fit the criteria to be able to pass a test for a police officer. You understand what I'm saying?
That's shameful. Yes.
So what is the difference? What type of differences are they making? What type of bar are they setting in the beginning when it comes to evaluating people before they become protect and serve? Okay, protect and serve. Anybody can say that pledge. Anybody can say that out of their mouth. But what I'm saying is, protect and serve. You need to evaluate these people's mindset before you make it okay for them to say that they can protect and serve someone else.
And I think it's not only at the beginning. And I think it's not only at the beginning.
Go ahead.
And I think it's not only at the beginning, but they're going to need it periodically. They need to have something that helps them deal with the terrible things they have to encounter in life. Right. And throughout their career, going to keep encountering these very dangerous, very threatening situations. They're called into these warlike situations many times. And what do you do to help them to get back to a more civil mindset? And I say that again
Right.
because in studying again African philosophy of some of the traditional African societies, we just see it in movies and we thought it was a joke, even with the Native Americans. Before they would go to a war, they would have what they would call a war party. And in studying some of the American Indians and the Africans, why they would have these war parties before they would go to war is basically when you went into battle, you need a certain type of a mindset that was different from the mindset that you would have normally. So you would have these gatherings where you would get together that you would help people get into the mindset that they would need to go into these battles. But what we didn't see is when you come back, you need something to get you back into the mindset of being in a civilized community. And many of the ancient societies, they had ways of dealing with when you're sending the person out to go into these terrible situations and how you welcome them back into the community where you don't have, where you're not going to be in this dreadful mindset that you need to be in to be a warrior. And so we need to start looking at some of those things. And when you're saying about, policemen, many of the policemen getting in there because they were bullied and they see it as protection, to me, there are things that need to be done on the community level that help these people deal with those throughout their careers. Because you can get it when they first come in, but if they get into a culture that has a messed up mindset, they will, you know, still be driven crazy. It's a wonder that more of them don't go crazy if society is not doing anything to deal with the problems that they're going to naturally face in life. Anyone else? Or hear some more? Because we haven't got to the message yet, and we're deep into the lesson. But anyone else would have to say before we start getting back to the message?
I do want to say one more thing, Father Tyrone.
Mhm.
One time you taught about the way that we were talking about the KKK and stuff like that at one time, and you were talking about how it still exists, but you were saying how they've changed it to where now they're more so taught to get into higher positions, to get into the governmental positions, to get into positions of authority, to become the judges, to become the lawyers, to become the police officers, so that the racism is more hidden, and also when certain trouble arises when it comes to them doing acts of racism, predominantly bad acts of racism, that they'll get off because of the higher authority that they're in when it comes to the judges and it comes to the politicians. So I think it still all leads back to that also.
Yes. All those are factors in there, and all of them are things that we should be working on. And so I'm going to take some of the things in that we were saying because I want to look more information into what Teresa said about Obama's commissions coming up with some ideas on how to deal with this. When Gwen was saying that there's some research on policeman's attitude about protection. And as we're saying when we're praying, some of these things we want to do, we actually do want to start on a prayer level. How can we start praying some of these things into existence? And then actually, after we pray for them, then we can stand for them in the community. And I'm not saying necessarily standing out there in a protest march, but there will be times when it comes time for you to stand in that voting booth, that you will stand. You will actually help other people to get to that voting booth. Or if you have to send some letters to the commissioner or governor or something, go to me. When you're talking about those standing for reconciliation, will we be ready to stand in those things? Okay, I'm going to mute everybody for a moment. And we're going to go to the message, this June message. We're going to just read some of it because this is our lesson for today, even though I think the things we're talking about are still about that. The June message saying, Stand in the awe of God. God's awe is the realization that God's will and wisdom is supreme over all. God's awe is when the supernatural sways the natural. The spirit is the causal power of the natural. God sways all factors of life, and all that God sways is the good. So I think this is telling us that when we're doing these things, know that God can do some things. That's why I said that we need to think on when we're praying, what we need to pray for. So I'm saying we need to study some of these things to see what they pray, because it says here that God's awe is the supernatural swaying the natural. And I think we need some of that supernatural intervention now to get us through some of the things that are going on. To go on, it says, God sways all the factors of, I think I read that, but God sways all the factors of life, and all that God sways is the good. Come from under the sway of the Lord ravings. Invite and welcome God into your heart center. Use your imagination to create the vision and arouse the higher forces of the inner self to manifest within and express in your character and circumstances. Create visions that will be the channel for the divine presence to abide within. Be filled with the esteem and have an unrelenting faith in the infinite power of God. Give honor to God. It is not enough to intellectualize God, it is essential to experience God's love and understanding. True knowledge of God comes from experiencing God's perfecting presence. Let me read that again. True knowledge of God comes from experiencing God's perfecting presence. Meditation, affirmation, and prayer connect you with divinity when you engage divinity with loving compassion. Loving compassion will help overcome the lower passions of lust, greed, and gluttony. Worship God in spirit and in truth. Read the 70th Psalm at night and the 71st Psalm in the morning. Burn white and orange candles together. We're going to open up, but I think there's so many things there. And what are some of your thoughts on God's awe is the supernatural swaying the natural? I'm going to unmute and give us all everyone a chance to say, what are some of your thoughts on God's will using supernatural ways to sway the natural? Any thoughts? I guess nobody's
I'm
having
trying to give folk a chance.
She's trying to get y'all to
I would have to say trust. Trust.
and the trust is so it is the thing. But sometimes you have to know we need to get a clear idea of what we want from God. And that's why I'm saying that's why we need to study some of these things. We need to study what is at the heart of the study, what is at the heart of the protesters. And see at the heart of these things, then we can start saying how we can be vessels for God's answers to these things. Anyone else have anything that they would like to add? Because it says that when you we are many times under the sway of the Lord ravings, under the sway of the Lord ravings. Remember in Ephesians we're saying about when it says that we are fighting against spiritual wickedness in high places. You come be because we don't do anything and for actions, we become under the sway of the powers that are over the high spiritual powers in our cities. Because for us, we believe that there are angels and spirits that help uh, to guide mankind in all ways of life. And actually, if you put together a city or a country or a municipality, actual spirit has to come with that. In Revelations, it was talking about as they were going, setting up churches all over the nation as they were starting up the Christian society, each church, when he wrote to them in Revelations, many of his revelations actually wrote to the spirit of that church. So what was he talking about, the spirit of that church? Um, that church actually creates a spirit that works with it. And he was writing sometimes, not, when the way he was saying, I'm not writing to the church, I'm actually writing to the actual spirit of that church, the angel of that church, the common idea that that church does when it comes together. And writing to those common ideas to the spirit of the church, he told some of those spirits what they were doing right, and most of them what they were doing wrong. Because one of the churches, when he wrote to them in Revelations, he tells it by how, what y'all doing, I just want y'all to keep on doing it because y'all are doing a great job. To one of the churches. The 6 other churches, he's saying, now look, this is what I got against you. And so sometimes we actually have to speak to the spirit of the thing. That's when they're talking about spiritual wickedness in high places. There becomes like a spirit behind those things. And you sometimes have to get to that spirit of those things to be able to cause some changes in it. And that's why I'm saying through prayer and meditation and through some of the things that we're going through in the church, you're actually trying to get the whole spirit behind that to sway, the whole spirit behind that to change, and the whole spirit of that to work together. And you're using your prayer along with your natural actions. Someone else wanted to speak? Go ahead.
Yes. Father Tyrone, so then, okay, when you were talking about how people, the form of retaliation that they have, and you said, retaliation is not the answer, as that you have to find a resolution. So when you resolution in solving some of the problems, so that means that the same mindset that certain groups or cults or whatever you want to call it would have, as far as them sticking together to get into those positions, then we have to basically work harder to get into those positions as well. Because if that is their game plan, to get into those positions in order to allow these things to happen and for them to be able to get away with these things, then more of us would have to work hard to get into those positions as well, because sometimes you cannot be as effective unless you're actually up there in it. You know what I'm saying? In those positions. Yes. So yeah. It's almost like Obama was in that position, but because there's not enough of us up high enough in those positions to help back Obama, it's even harder for Obama. It was even harder for Obama. You get what I'm saying? So,
yes, and hard after. Remember, Obama. Obama was, to me, a great push for the black race. It showed the black people rising up. And anytime in history that you've seen black people make a big push forward, there's always following it a terrible white backlash. Yeah. And we have to learn how to get through that backlash. And I'll say that going all the way back to when they abolished slavery in 1865. And then after 1865, you see all these great movements of black people helping to change legislatures and change legislation. And the public school system in Florida started because of black people getting their freedom in Florida and pushing for public education. But then 5 years after that, in 1870, you see that the white people have this great backlash against all these things that the black people have done. You see that they're getting amnesty from the president at that time. And with that amnesty, and they had the power to vote, they wanted to vote out almost everything that black people had put in place. About the only thing they didn't want to vote out is the public school system. But what they did to the public school system is made it for white people only. And that's where you get the Jim Crow laws. So after you have this great idea of black people making it through emancipation, you have this history of the Jim Crow laws trying to pull all of those things back. And so all of the fights that we had between 1870 and the 1960s was a backlash from Black people being freed. So that whole civil rights movement, and now you see in the in 1950s and 60s, you see with Brown versus the board and with some other things with in the 1964 Voting Rights Act, you see Black people making a push forward. After that, you again see a white backlash trying to fight against those things. Some of them under this guise of their fighting against pro-life and pro-choice. You see them fight back against this liberty. And then when you have a ball coming, you again see another time where Black people, and to me, what Black people are trying to do is we're trying to push America forward to its ideal of truth, justice, and equality. We're trying to push it more and more towards equality. And every time we try to get that big push, you're going to see a big backlash. So right now, we're under part of that backlash. Our forefathers have shown that they would keep the fight going, and eventually they will keep the ball moving forward, even though you reach tough times like this. So we're in a tough time now, but through that tough time, we can still say that we can push the ball forward. And part of pushing the ball forward is meaning getting into some of those positions, and part of it is meaning to actually change the hearts and minds and aspirations of people so that they can start, because like I said, race is a myth. Race is something that is made up. God does not see races. And I mean, he doesn't see me as one race and the white person as another race. God is awesome, and he sees all of us as his children. And he wants us to create a society that can bring all of his children up. That's what equality is talking about. That is what liberty is really for. Liberty is not about holding down one class of people and so that another class of people can sit in comfort, and then use some of those poor people to keep them fighting against each other. So those who feel that they are rich and powerful feel that they will have more riches and power. Um, but
Brother Tyrone.
yes, ma'am.
Okay. I wanted to go back and elaborate because you asked an original question about can you recite the question you asked us again, dealing with the supernatural and the natural?
Yes. And the thing it says, God is when the supernatural sways the natural. The spirit is the causal power of the natural. So it's saying the supernatural is spiritual. So the question is, do you believe that spiritual power, supernatural power, can actually cause, when it says cause, it means it's the cause, can actually cause the natural to change?
Okay. Can I tell a quick story, everybody? Just a quick one. Okay. Okay. I heard a story some years ago, and it's supposedly a true story that happened. I don't know if that was South Carolina or Georgia. I don't remember the state, but it supposedly happened some time ago. There was a pastor in the church, and the pastor had asked his congregation, are they willing at any time to be are they willing at any time to be a witness or to die for God? So he asked them, everybody, and he said, for those who are ready at any time to give their life for God, be a witness for God, because a lot of times being a witness for God is giving your life for God, right? And he asked them, everybody raised their hand, and he said, are you absolutely sure that at any point in time that you would be willing to give your life and be a witness for God and whatever God needed? They all raised their hand. This pastor went to a very, very extraordinary extent of proving whether they would be willing to truly be that witness or die for God. So the pastor had a gunman come into the church, but the person didn't. I don't think it was a real gun, but the person came into the church at some point in time, and the person gave the church an ultimatum. For everybody who truly believes in the Christ and is ready to die for their Christ, stay in the church. For everybody who's not ready to die for their Christ, you can leave. Most of the church ran out of the church.
No, they did. I saw that one coming, Gwen.
Yes. And to me,
this truly happened.
yeah.
This truly happened.
And I'm telling you, I would have been the ones that went out. I would have been one of. I would have gone out too, because you say you don't. Those kind of tests. Jesus, when Jesus was tested that he could turn a bread to stone, he said that there's more to life than just bread. When he was put on top of a temple and said you can jump down and the angels will save you, he said you don't test God. And I think when a pastor trying to give that kind of test didn't, to me, have the same idea of what I consider God will make you a witness. I believe God makes you a witness by God showing you his power in things in life, not by you just going out there testifying. Testifying to me is not just saying I'm a witness because I go out there and I'll say a whole bunch of things. To me, God makes you a witness because you actually get to see his power in action. That to me is what a witness is. A witness is a person who has actually seen the power of God in action. And so to me, to say I'm going to stand up and let somebody shoot at me at the gun, I wouldn't. I don't know if the pastor or the man who went there with the gun were in the right spirit of God to try to make me think that, to show that I believe in God, I need to stand up and let somebody shoot bullets at me. Just like those people, some people that they take snake venom, and they actually do. They actually take snake venom and give it to some of the people. It's supposed to be a church, and if you don't die of the snake venom, that means that God's loved you. I don't believe that God, for man's sake, to be seen, because see that one of the reasons I believe Jesus didn't do that is just to be seen jumping down off the top of a building, just to be seen as the one who's in control of everything, is not the way God makes you a witness. God makes me a witness by some of the things that God has done in my life that I cannot begin to believe that was not God in action. That's the kind of witness that I believe in. So to me, making you a witness, God actually lets you know, and it's a personal thing. It's not when God makes you a witness that way, you can't go, you don't say, well, my mama told me that her cousin uncle saw God. No, God will show you personally. And many times, what God has shown you personally, the reason I say it's not so much as far as a testimony, because I can testify to you some of the things that God has done for me in my life. And you may not even believe that was God. You'll say, oh, that might have just been a coincidence. It's because God's make you the type of witness that it is presented to you for you. And that deepens your faith when you see God doing things for you that the others can't see. When you ask for something and it comes through and you knew in your life, because, how could you explain to somebody, oh, there was no way in my life that should have worked, and yet it worked. And something happened to you where God shows you, and I'll give you an example of something, and I usually don't even tell people about this, of God showing me certain insights. And this is how much time we got. Okay, but I'll tell the story. And this has happened to me several times in this way. And I still believe it was God in action, protecting me. And I was at Florida Atlantic University. We used to play intramural football games. That means that it was just one group playing, one group of the school playing against another group. When I was at Florida Atlantic, it did not have a football team. So we would play intramural. So clubs would play against clubs. and I was in the United Black Students Club. And we would play against a lot of sorority, I mean, a lot of the fraternal groups and other groups at the school. And there was one group that everybody kind of knew that they did not like Black people. And our team, our Black students team had a game against this team. That was flag football. And I was one of the, I guess you call them the linemen. I was rushing the quarterback. And I was putting a lot of pressure on him. And what I learned later, what they had done is because I was putting so much pressure on the quarterback that they had told one of their guys to break my ankle by falling down and hitting my ankle. Now I learned this afterwards. What happened during the game? There would be times in that game that I would get this message: lift your foot up. And that would be the message I was getting. Lift your foot up. And I would lift my foot up, and a guy would fall down under my foot. And it happened several times in the game. They would just, and it would tell me which foot to lift up, and I would just lift that foot up, and it was guy fall down fall down right near my ankle. And so I did not get my ankle broken in that. And it was after the game. They used to have this place called the Rest Gala. When we were leaving, I saw the guy, and because it was like one guy who was always the one who was under my foot, and I saw him, and he had gone. The Rest Gala was the beer joint that we have. He was coming out of the beer joint, and he's the one who came to me and confessed that they were trying to get me off the field. Now, for me, I know that was God in action. I usually don't tell that story because people can say, "Oh no, that was just a coincidence." How do you know he was really falling at your feet to break your foot? How do you know he was telling the no? But for me, and that's not the only time that God has given me messages like that. They have protected me physically in positions like that. But do I go in church all the time telling those things? But I believe that God made me a witness that he can give me a message that can save me and can save others. So for me, it is a deep part of my faith, the times that God has saved me by giving me messages. That I feel is a witness. Not standing up in front of someone, in front of a fool with a gun in a church to prove that God has given messages to me.
Daddy, you play football? I didn't see that. What? You went to a beer joint? A bar?
I was not in the. Let me clarify the beer joint.
Oh my God.
I said I was passing by the Rathskeller. The Rathskeller was a part of the what do you call it? The student union. What do you call a place where the student was a student union? The place where you go.
Student union.
The student union. So I was not going to the Rathskeller. I have never liked beer. Still don't like beer. I was not going. And the crazy thing about it, the Rathskeller, the beer they gave
You
since
could,
it was.
you could, you could have been a drinker. It's okay. I'm just in shock. You played football. I know that. Sorry, people, for derailing the service. It just threw me off.
No problem.
And it was flag football. It was not, even though we used to play other football. Remember, I came from the projects. Sometimes if you didn't play football, you didn't have nothing to play. So we played. I did not play on school. Well, when you say cool, remember?
I'm just shocked that you even know how to play football, Daddy. It's just I never knew that.
Okay. So that's what Zandra got out of the story.
I got the other stuff. I'm just saying I was just shocked about you playing football. I can't imagine.
And I want everybody to know that FAMU did not have a place where we could easily get liquor off the campus.
Why y'all don't have to defend that y'all were drinking in college days? It's okay.
No, I'm not talking about that. On the white campuses, they had
They would always have like a beer joint. And this was on the campus. This wasn't off the campus. This was a beer joint that was on the campus in the student union. It had they call them a rascaller. The rascaller. So, and it was light beer. But in those days, they really didn't have a light beer, but they did have like a low, I don't know what you call it, low alcohol content beer that they would actually sell on the campus of it. It wasn't supposed to be full strength beer, but it was a place called the Rathskeller that you went to drink beer on the campus.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Isn't that illegal though? Wasn't you guys supposed to be 21?
I think I didn't go there. I don't know if they carded people or not. I think they probably did because it would have been. And remember when I went to Florida Atlantic University, it was a upper division college. It wasn't the first 2 years. So most of the students there would have been past drinking age. But I think I think they may have carded people because it was not the main part of the student union where you can go to the cafeteria and stuff. That it wasn't a part of that. So it was some type of something you had to go through to get in there. I don't know what that was, so I don't know what you had to do to be able to get into the Rathskeller.
Okay.
Beer has never been my thing. Even when and I'm not saying I never drank anything in my life, but beer has never been to my
Never
taste.
mind either.
Your daughter just muted herself, so I guess she didn't want to say. She probably would have said, "Oh Lord."
Oh my God.
I'm gonna just let y'all continue with the service and see what I learn.
But anyone else have anything that they talk about? But I'd like you to think on that message and think about God is awesome. God is great. And we can find ways to apply God's truth to our everyday problems and also apply them in supernatural ways that will manifest in natural ways. Because we just don't want and the reason I keep pulling that, we don't just want supernatural things that'll stay supernatural. We don't say, oh, even if we say that we're laying up timber in heaven, we're not laying up timber in heaven for it to stay up in heaven. We're laying up timber in heaven so that we can find ways to bring it here. When it talks about, one of the things it talks about here is that you actually want to, these things you pray for, you want to put them in your heart. You want to put them in your physical heart so that it sort of like beats in the natural and it actually start changing things around for you in the natural. We can make heavenly things. Heaven has floodgates, and those floodgates do what? It releases those blessings to us now. And this is a time where we need a lot of blessings. We need blessings flowing. We need for people, because what do one of the worst parts about this is, what do you tell your young Black men and women when they're growing up when they see Black people can be murdered in the and no consequences come from it? What do you tell them when they can see someone who just goes to the store to get a pack of Skittles and have someone come up and say, can follow you around and end up shooting you? Or when you can just run through a neighborhood and be gunned down by men in trucks? It's kind of hard to let those children know. Last time we talked about hope as expectancy. You're going to change that person's expectancy. You're going to change what they can hope for in life if you don't let them see that God has a way to protect you from those things. Remember, St. Gwen talked about policemen are a lot of times people who are bullied in life and feel they have no protection. How many Black children are walking around feeling that they have no protection if they don't have the police? If they feel that white people can come in indiscriminately, do something to them, and they're not supposed to do anything back. Think of what kind of mindset that puts in them. And that's why you see many of them, when you get into these things, why they act out. They're acting out the fact that they don't feel protected, and they especially don't feel protected by the police. And I'm saying, my thing is, how do we find to reconcile that so that Black children, white children, all children feel that there are guardians out there for them? And some of those guardians will be walking around in uniforms that we call the police. We need to find
Father
ways to make that.
Tyrone,
Yes, ma'am.
excuse me 1 second. It kind of takes me back to when you. I'm sure everybody that's listening has seen the Malcolm X movie once or twice. And in the Malcolm X movie, if you remember the scene where the white girl came up to Malcolm X and some of the brothers, and she was asking, how can she help the cause? And could she join? You guys remember that scene on the stairs?
I remember that.
Okay, and Malcolm X told her that she couldn't, that she can contribute financially to help the cause, but that she could not join. She could not be a part of the cause because we had to learn how to stick together first. I understand that you said that there is no such thing as race, but I guess as far as the visual part of it, as far as, people that look like each other as in the form of color in some way.
There are ethnic groups. We're ethnic groups, yes. I believe in we're ethnic groups. But this idea that we are different. See, when you're saying that we are different species, and this used to be something that some of what they would call the white anthropologists actually used to teach, they actually believe that if a white person slept with a Black person, reason they would call them half breeds. Half breeds are saying that they were kind of messed up, and in fact that they were sterile. There used to be an idea that the reason they call one group of Black people mulattoes, a mulatto, from the Spanish word a mule. Now I think I've said this before. A mule is a cross between a horse and a donkey. The horse and the donkey are actually two different species of whatever horses are, and so they don't produce a an offspring that can have children. They're sterile. Mules do not have children. Mules are sterile. Um, and when they were telling about mulattoes, they actually used to think that mulattoes, even though it was contrary to everything that was in evidence, that mulattoes were sterile because they believed they were different species, that they were there were different genus. They weren't from the same bloodline. They weren't from the same gene pool as each other, and so they were like dead end. Now, the crazy thing about this, nothing in life showed them this. They showed them mulattoes having quadrants and all that, but they actually had scientific societies that were out there saying that no, that they were different species, they're different breeds, and not like different breeds of different types of horses, but they were actually different species that when they made it, they produced something that did not produce the other thing anymore. Because like I said, when you put a horse with a mare, you don't get a horse with a donkey. You don't get a horse and you don't get a donkey, you get a mule. A mule is sterile. It's like a totally different thing. And for many years, they actually were trying to push this philosophy that Black people and white people were a whole different species. And now, when they even through every time they tried to prove this, it has come up wrong. They've gone back to the gene level, and they've seen on the gene level everybody comes from Africa. But have they said, this ideas we had about race is totally false? Is not no basis in scientific fact. There's no basis that if you put a black person with a white person, that they come out and that the offspring will be sterile. But they still want this mindset that they have made up to protect a certain class and of rich people. They keep trying to make it seem like it's some scientific base to it. They want try to make it seem, oh no, there was a biblical base to it, and black people were cursed but they got the curse of Cain on them. And even black scholars were working about how we were part of that. Even though, and this is the crazy thing about it, they have black scholars that were arguing that even if we were the part of the people that were under the curse of Cain, that we still made us cousins, at least, because we were still part of Noah's bloodline. And that's when they kind of stopped trying to use biblical, because even if you're still a part of your bloodline, you have no reason to treat us the way you're treating us. And so they went from the biblical basis and they started trying to find a scientific basis to make the races different, and their scientific basis fell through. Especially with Darwin's theory of people coming from other primates, like the apes. But don't get me started on that, because you get me started on the Planet of the Apes. That's part of a theory that they had, that the black people came from gorillas, white people came from chimpanzees, Chinese people came from orangutans. Now, there's been no scientific thing that got that, but they still have this kind of concept that we came, because those three types of, I don't know what you call them, monkeys or gorillas, those are different species. You cannot mate an orangutan with a gorilla and get a child. You cannot mate a gorilla with a chimpanzee and get a child. There are different species of, I don't know, the group is called monkeys or sapiens. There are different groups of sapiens that don't cross each other's gene line. So, but they keep trying to make us feel that we are part of something that is not a part of a common gene line. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not different ethnic groups. It does not mean that there are cultural differences, some of them physical, between us. But it does mean that at the root of all of us is God. Anyone else?
I got a comment.
Yes.
I was looking at this word supernatural,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want people to think that that's some way out kind of thing, because I was listening to a CD from Yogananda when time when they had a birthday party for him, and he was talking about how he was letting the people know that God is right here.
Mm-hmm.
Said how God manifests. Said when you look at a flower, when you look at a rose, said that was God. That is God peeping at you. He said the beauty of it, you're seeing it with your eyes, and you smell it. That's God using manifesting the smell so that you know I'm right here. That's me. And you smell it with your nose. And he was talking about how the bird singing. You hear the beautiful sound of the bird. And he was saying that that's God. You hear him. He wants you to know that he's right here. He's here. Please notice me. And it's not something that's like way off the or I guess we call it supernatural, but it's natural. And and what it is, God is right here. He has made everything to try to get our attention, but we're not seeing him.
Amen. Yeah, because even I have for you have mentioned that comic strip I started. It's called the Supernatural Heroes of a Liberty Course. I use the word supernatural because supernatural also means spiritual, and I see supernatural is that super part of nature. So it is a part of nature. You have that super part of nature that has this like we said, God is awesome. So in his natural existence, he has he has a realm of it that is super and beyond our realm of seeing. And when I say seeing, it's beyond the realm of our eyes, beyond the realm of our ears, beyond the realm of our touch from the physical standpoint. That doesn't mean that we don't have spiritual senses that can actually connect up with that super part of nature. And so in my comic book, the children have these ESP, these extrasensory perception, that they can be able to see this part of the natural that is beyond the normal scope of our senses. That's one of the things I'm trying to bring out in that comic strip, that the supernatural is just that part of nature that is beyond the normal scope of our material bodies. But some people do have the ability to actually go into that super realm, that extra perception realm of nature to be able to manifest these things. So yes, supernatural is not talking about something that is beyond, but it is the only thing that it is beyond is our normal range of our material senses. But that does not mean that it's beyond the realm of our spiritual senses. So supernatural and spiritual or heavenly. Sometimes they translate the word supernatural in the Bible as heavenly. Heavenly then also is this spiritual realm that is not necessarily in the sky, but is just not normally within our range of material senses. Anyone else have any comments? Or
Father Tyrone,
yes, ma'am.
Father Tyrone, I'm a little confused.
Mhm.
I'm a little confused. I'm confused because okay, now when she was talking about the birds singing and smelling the rose, I can relate to that as far as God showing us that He's here. The supernatural, but that's God showing us that He's here. So that is the natural. That is the natural, like she said.
Mhm.
The supernatural, that's something that that I mean, as far as things that I've dealt with in my life, it's and some of the things all of us have dealt with. Sometimes the things that's unexplained. Am I right?
Uh, Sometimes the supernatural explains to you because when Yogananda
It's
is talking about
spiritual.
when you
It's something spiritual. See, we caught up on what they put out supernatural as. That's really not what it is. The definition that you are dealing with in your mind, I had to deal with too, but it's not really that. It's something spiritual that we have access to.
because even sometimes
Right.
when a bird is
I
singing,
agree.
yeah, even when you see a bird singing to you or you have a smell that you notice, many times that is you noticing something that is beyond the natural. Most, you can say, oh, a bird sings. That's just coincidental. Sometimes a bird singing is giving you a message. Or when you have a certain smell comes to your attention, you're actually getting a message from the supernatural, and it causes, like it says, the supernatural causes things in the natural. So, in our way of thinking, many times those things that God can be giving you a message, God can be giving you an idea that comes to you, that's something that you just said as a natural as the bird singing. But could you sometimes you hear a bird sing at that right moment when you needed to hear something beautiful? Or birds can be singing all the time, and a lot of times you don't notice it. But then there'll be times when you actually notice that bird singing. That bird singing actually gives you a message. Then it becomes actually from that supernatural, that part that even is beyond just a bird sitting on a tree or beyond just a flower sending out a scent to you, that there is a spiritual sense that you can get, that you actually get a intelligent message from this. Because we say God is in all things and God is intelligent, from our type of spiritualism, everything has intelligence in it. In the natural way that they treat you now, There are animate things and inanimate things. Things that are inanimate have no intelligence behind them. Things that are animate have the ability to move, and then man has this ability to think. Well, when you start seeing how awesome God is, and you know that God is in all things, you tell me there's some things that God wisdom is not in them. There's some things that God's power is not in them, and there's some things in God's power that is power in them. I don't believe that. I believe if God is an awesome God, God is an intelligent God, God is a powerful God. So God's power is in all things that we see manifested.
Daddy, but I
Okay.
think another way you can look at it from a supernatural perspective too, and a superpower, just to kind of explain it a little bit. The way I think about it is in the stories that you just talked about. So you just said that, you know, you could be having a bad day or something like that, and a bird comes to you, and in that moment, you hear that bird, you hear the beautiful sound, and it makes you feel better. It makes you, it takes you to a better place or a spiritual level that makes you realize something. And then it also, supernatural or superpower could be, like you mentioned in the story about playing football, you said something was telling you to move your foot or whatever. I feel like that could be considered the superpower that you can't necessarily see, touch, feel, or manifest, but it's just a knowing that you knew, hey, I need to move my foot in this moment. That could have been the super spiritual power that you don't see, that's not a bird. That's not something that's in the physical. It's just something that you feel, something that you know to do, something. It's usually what y'all talk about, that still small voice that's just telling you, that's pushing you to do something. And then later you find out, oh, this still small voice was telling me to do something because it was protecting me. So I feel like all of those things can be considered supernatural powers. Some of those supernatural powers are things that you can see that's actual in the physical, like the bird singing or the flower making you feel, the smell that you feel helping to calm you down. And some things are things that just can't be explained, but you have a knowing or um a sense of doing something, or a sense of something that is actually protecting you in the end. So I think that's the difference between, what we call this superpower. There are some that you can feel and see that come and manifest naturally in birds and all kind of other things, but there are also ones that you just can't really explain, but you just knew, or you felt a sense of something that told you to do something different than what you would normally do, that actually came out and ended up protecting you. So I think that might be the difference in what we say when we talk about, superpowers and all this supernatural stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know
Because
if that helps explain it.
yeah, because remember the word that they're translating in super here, if I remember correctly, is a part of a Greek word that just means beyond. And what it's saying is beyond is something that is beyond. That's why I call it beyond the normal range of your senses.
Why don't we say
Okay.
beyond the material range?
Material range, yeah, yeah. Because some people have their natural range is beyond the material.
Right.
So anyone else?
Father Tyrone,
Yes, ma'am.
if I'm correct, I it was one of your teachings that taught me this, and you were talking about portals,
Mhm.
and you were talking about I don't know whether it was the sightings or was from you reading or what have you, about the different ways some portals look and what they potentially look like. All I know is that, and I think this when I first started going to the temple, and you had answered a question for me that I had had for many years, because many years ago I went to the doctor because I was seeing clear water in the ceiling and in the sky,
Mhm.
and I was seeing it on and off at times, and I went to the eye doctor because I thought something was wrong with my eyes. I told the doctor what I saw. The doctor looked at me crazy and checked my eyes.
Mhm.
He checked my eyes back then, and my eyes, I had 20/20 vision. My eyes were good. He said he didn't see anything visually wrong with my eyes. He still prescribed me reading glasses for just in case I was straining my eyes. But he visually didn't find anything wrong with my eyes at that time. My eyes are not good now, but I'm saying back then. So I never got an answer to what the water in the sky and the ceiling was, and it was clear water, and it was like wavy. I was actually moving and everything until I came to the temple, and you had some type of teaching on portals. And you were saying how different people was actually sighting portals and seeing portals and what some of the portals look like. And I think you had described a portal that reminded me of the water I kept seeing in the ceiling and in the skies. And that day I got my answer that I was actually seeing portals.
Yeah. You were seeing beyond the material. Yeah. That's it.
Right.
And that's
So
and people, yes, that's a part of that super. Remember, it says just beyond, and they said, I think St. Teresa said, saying it's beyond our material range, but that doesn't mean it's beyond our spirit. Remember, all of us still have a spirit in us, and that spirit still has some of these awesome powers that comes from God. And the Bible talks about them as gifts from gifts of the spirit or the fruit of the spirit. And I think that we need to teach our children, especially from our culture, we need to teach them about them because so many of them encounter them in their life. And there's so much in the common world that tries to teach them that, oh no, that's fake. Now they try to teach you about race, which is a real myth, but then don't want to teach you about the spirit is from the truth. Because you said you must worship God in spirit and in truth. So that is true, but they're trying to say, oh no, there's no such thing. When they tell you there's no such thing as ghost, they're really telling you there's no such thing as spirit, because the word ghost and spirit means the same. So if they're telling you there's no such thing as spirit, they're trying to block what we all know is that we do have spiritual gifts. And when you think of supernatural, think of it as that range of spirituality that goes beyond the material. We've gone, we're at 12 o'clock, and we usually like to try to stop at 12 o'clock. I'll give you well, let me just go ahead and do dismissal, and I'll leave the mic open so I can turn off the recording. So for our dismissal, I'd just like to say, may the love of God illuminate your way. May the will of God direct you each day. May the truth of God all errors depart, and may the peace of God forever dwell in your heart. Amen, amen, amen.